In the summer of 1870, two powerful empires clashed in a war that would redraw the map of Europe. One, France, was a proud imperial giant led by a fading monarch. The other, Prussia, was a rising force led by a mastermind who wanted to forge a new German empire. In just 6 months, an emperor would be captured, an empire would collapse, and the seeds of 2 world wars would be planted. This is the story of how a short, brutal war gave birth to modern Germany and changed world history forever. The mid-19th century was a time of political ambition, national pride, and quiet tension. France, under Napoleon III, still saw itself as the dominant power in Europe, but in the shadows, a new force was rising. Otto von Bismarck, Prussia's iron-willed chancellor, had already defeated Denmark and Austria. His mission? Unify the scattered German states under one flag, one empire. Prussia had modernized its army, built railroads for rapid troop movement, and built alliances with the southern German states. But there was one obstacle to complete unification: France. Napoleon III, eager to restore French prestige, saw the growing power of Prussia as a threat. But his military was outdated, his advisors were divided, and his people were not ready for war. Then came the spark, the Ems Dispatch, a simple diplomatic telegram that Bismarck cleverly edited to insult France. It worked. On July 19, 1870, France declared war. Napoleon believed it would be a swift, glorious campaign. He couldn't have been more wrong. On one side stood the French Empire, led by Napoleon III, the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. Though once a symbol of ambition, Napoleon III now ruled a fractured nation with an aging military and questionable leadership. France had numbers, but lacked coordination. Its generals often disagreed, and communication between command and field was slow and confused. On the other side, the Prussian-led North German Confederation was backed by the southern German states, forming a well-organized war machine. Their true weapon wasn't just soldiers, it was efficiency. Helmut von Moltke, the Prussian general, had revolutionized military planning. Railroads moved troops in days, not weeks. Orders were precise, objectives were clear, and guiding it all, Otto von Bismarck, the master of realpolitik. While generals handled battles, Bismarck handled narratives, shaping international opinion, isolating France diplomatically, and keeping other European powers at bay. France was proud, Prussia was prepared, and now the war would reveal just how wide that gap truly was. France fired the first shot. On July 19, 1870, it declared war on Prussia, confident it could crush a rising power before it became too strong. But within weeks, that confidence began to crumble. French troops were scattered across the border, unsure of their objectives. Prussia, by contrast, struck with speed and precision. The early battles, Württemberg, Spitzeren, and Worth, were swift and devastating. French forces were pushed back repeatedly, losing thousands of men and tons of equipment. The Prussian advantage was clear: superior coordination, faster mobilization through rail networks, and advanced military doctrine. Their artillery, known as Krupp guns, outranged and outpowered the French. Meanwhile, French leadership faltered. Napoleon's commanders suffered from poor health and indecision. Field Marshal Bazaine, one of his key commanders, struggled to make decisive moves. By late August, the French army had split. One half retreated to the fortress city of Metz. The other half moved toward the town of Sedan, where disaster awaited. The morning of September 1, 1870, began with fog rolling over the hills of Sedan. French troops, exhausted and cornered, were unaware that nearly 200,000 Prussian and German soldiers had surrounded them. Artillery thundered through the mist. The French were trapped in a natural bowl, easy targets for the well-positioned Prussian guns above. Napoleon III was on the field, but powerless. He watched from a distance as his army was shredded, his cavalry charges repelled, his lines broken. General McMahon, wounded early in the battle, left command in disarray. Multiple generals gave conflicting orders. Chaos ruled. By mid-afternoon, French units surrendered en masse. Soldiers waved white flags. Thousands dropped their rifles and marched into captivity. Then came the unthinkable. Napoleon III himself surrendered, the Emperor of France, captured by the enemy. For Prussia, it was a stunning victory. For France, it was humiliation on a scale not seen since Waterloo. The fall of Sedan shattered the French Empire. Within days, Paris erupted in revolution. Napoleon III was deposed. The Second Empire was dead. But the war was far from over. With Napoleon III gone, a new government, the Third Republic, was declared in Paris. But the Germans kept marching. By mid-September, Prussian forces encircled the French capital. Paris, the heart of France, was under siege. Inside the city, hope turned to hardship. Food supplies dwindled. Citizens ate horses, dogs, even zoo animals to survive. But Parisians didn't surrender easily. Hot air balloons carried messages and men over enemy lines. Carrier pigeons were used to maintain communication with the outside world. They were desperate, but defiant. French attempts to break the siege failed repeatedly. Armies in the provinces tried to lift the blockade, but were too disorganized too late. As winter set in, the suffering grew unbearable. Cold, hunger, and disease spread through the city. Morale collapsed. In January 1871, after more than 4 brutal months, Paris surrendered. The war was effectively over. But for Bismarck, one final move remained. He wanted to humiliate France and unite Germany once and for all. On January 18, 1871, inside the glittering Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, the German Empire was proclaimed. Wilhelm I of Prussia was crowned Emperor of a united Germany, surrounded by generals, princes, and Bismarck himself, while outside, the city of Paris lay in defeat. For France, it was more than a loss. It was a national humiliation. Under the Treaty of Frankfurt, France was forced to cede Alsace and part of Lorraine rich, symbolic territories to Germany. The French public was outraged. The wound would fester for decades. France was also forced to pay 5 billion francs in reparations, a massive sum that deepened its economic crisis. But for Bismarck, it was a complete triumph. In just 7 months, he had united the German states into one empire and positioned Germany as the new power in Europe. Yet the seeds of future catastrophe had already been sown. The French thirsted for revenge. The loss of Alsace-Lorraine became a national obsession. German militarism and pride grew unchecked. In the decades that followed, alliances shifted, arms races intensified, and tension returned to Europe. 43 years later, those same tensions would ignite the First World War. The Franco-Prussian War had ended, but its shadow would stretch far into the 20th century. The Franco-Prussian War was short, just under a year, but its consequences were massive. It ended an empire, birthed another, and shifted the balance of power in Europe. It introduced new forms of warfare, faster mobilization, modern artillery, and strategic rail transport. But more than that, it reshaped identities, national pride in Germany, national trauma in France. For Prussia, it was the final step in unification. For France, the beginning of decades of unrest, instability, and longing for redemption. And for the rest of the world, it was a warning of how quickly a diplomatic spark could ignite a continental blaze. History remembers World Wars I and II, but before them, there was Sedan. There was Paris. There was Bismarck. The Franco-Prussian War may be forgotten by many today, but it was the war that built Germany, broke France, and changed Europe forever.